Welcome back to season 2, episode 7 of The Human Role, where we are going to talk about consulting services. It's been popular, but I feel like there are more people getting into this world and this field of work. Wanted to kind of just touch base on how to kind of go about things, how to maybe get going, how can you even get clients if you're looking at being a consultant on your own, and then you're as a company wise, why would you get a consultant? What are the benefits of having a consultant? It definitely can be beneficial, especially when you're thinking of just needing to get a specific project underway, right? And you may not need to hire someone full-time for that specific role. And we will have a special guest, Ben Edwards, coming up that will also provide his insight on certain challenges and pitfalls in the evolution of consulting services. But to start, I wanted to actually formally introduce, if no one has yet to see it, on my LinkedIn page, I am myself starting my own or have started my own consulting firm. And so with that being said, I wanted to introduce Transcenders Consulting Group. That is my official firm. I am the CEO of that consulting firm. We specialize in payroll ins and outs of payroll from start to finish, processing heavy payroll audits, taxation support as well. So not only just tax registration for IDs, but also heavy tax audits and tax filing if you all need that specifically done for your company or for yourself if you're just a one-man show, one-woman show. And then also to HR and benefits. So when we talk about HR side of things, any type of HR policies, HR reviews of handbooks and so forth, benefits as well. So heavy benefits audits, broker negotiations, adding in benefits like plan setups in your system. Depending on when your open enrollment season, comes about, we can definitely help with open enrollment, but then also to just the normal day-to-day of your benefits or month-to-month keep up of your benefits. Benefits also includes ACA support. So your 1095Cs, 1094s. Also too, I know that's more of like a year-end thing, but you do need to do things throughout the year to keep up with that so that your year-end isn't so top-heavy. So we can also support that as well. And then HRIS and implementation. So any type of implementing of any different payroll modules, whether it's a full suite implementation of payroll and also like time and attendance. But alongside that, definitely any type of performance management, any type of like compensation platforms that you're going through, any review of just like best practices, a full system audit, just to see like, is your team doing things the best way possible? Between myself and my team, we are experienced across multiple different systems, HCM systems. So feel free to send a note through the website, either send me a note directly through LinkedIn. The email address will be here on the screen as well. I'm really excited about it. It's been definitely a journey, but happy to, get this going. And, as we kind of begin on some clients as well, I wanted to formally now announce things on my new path. So definitely reach out if you or if your company needs someone, or if you know of anyone that needs this type of support, send me a note. So wanting to kind of switch to my conversation with Ben Edwards and get into our specific discussion around consulting services. I'll be back after that to chime in and give you all some final insight after our discussion. So please enjoy. Okay, welcome everyone. As mentioned not too long ago, I do have a very special guest, Ben Edwards. He is a VP of Consulting Services for CMAP software. Welcome, Ben. We're really excited to have you here today.
I appreciate the invite and great to be here too.
So this topic, as everyone knows, is going to be discussing consulting services and, how it can be beneficial not only for your company, but also if you are a consultant listening in, what challenges you may come across, how to get through those challenges, and what that would really look like from your side. And then, of course, we're going to get into a little bit later on the CMAP software and how that, can be beneficial for certain companies. And Ben can give you some insight there in case you ever want to reach out to him. But to get us going for right now, Ben, I wanted to just allow you to have maybe a brief introduction for anyone in my network that may not know of you or want to start following you, Ben, you guys post great informational content consistently. He also runs his own webinars. So Ben, I wanted to just kind of like allow you the floor and give maybe either a little bit of your background or just kind of like what they can expect to see from you once they start connecting with you.
Yeah, thanks, Tiana. So I'm Ben Edwards. I'm the VP of Partnerships and also the lead for our North American consulting offering here at CMAP. We're a PSA solution, so it's an operations platform for consultancies. The main part in my role is partnering with other firms and other types of solutions in the consulting network, providing thought leadership content through webinars, and also working with other consultancies on more of a commercial basis. So getting an understanding of our solution and then hopefully working them through to be a potential client.
Absolutely. No, look, and I can attest to a lot of your webinars, a lot of the guests that are on, really great insight. So to everyone listening in, definitely check out Ben's page, listen into some of his webinars if you get a chance, because it's really, really helpful, especially for this side of the house too, on the consulting side, whether you're a company, yourself, larger company, or whether you're, a consultant either in the world already or looking to get into consulting, it definitely is going to be very beneficial. So we'll get into a couple of just insights from our experience, from our network that we're aware of, certain things that people may or may not struggle with once you're getting into this world. So now that the world is really, at least from my side, since I've been exposed to this over the last some odd years, consultants are, seemingly becoming a big hot topic and definitely have been around for quite some time, but picking up some traction. So we want to get into maybe like what sets someone apart, right? So when you're talking about.
Hey there, I'm Tim Boris, host of the Working Well podcast, where business strategy meets human sustainability. If you're an executive, a leader, or change maker ready to ditch burnout, build thriving teams, and drive real results, this is your next must listen. Tune in on the Work Defined Network or at timboris.com/podcast.
Out there is a lot of people with a lot of experience, how you can paint yourself or talk yourself up to where, your experience is really up to par. That way, companies and clients definitely want to keep working with you. And so from what I've seen is it's really important, I think, to really stay the SME of all topics, subject matter expert on your field specifically and what that really looks like. So Ben, just curious from your side and with your network and background, especially being at CMAP, any opinion or insight on what you would think would really help set someone apart?
Yeah, so I guess when considering setting yourself apart, the first thing to think of is, well, what defines success within the market structure? So both sides of the Atlantic, in terms of the consulting market, you've still got the big players, the McKinseys of this world. But over a period of time, let's say last 15, 20 years, there's been an explosion of boutiques, SMEs, solo consultancies who've really niched down on specialist domain expertise and created a business for themselves, or if they've managed to get some scale, their group of partners, or even started more of an actual firm type structures. In consultancies, we tend to find, though, the scaling to exit, and that means building a consulting brand that you can then sell to another bigger consulting brand. Scaling for investment, predominantly that's private equity type investors now getting involved, enabling you to accelerate that growth with that investment, or just creating a fantastic sort of brand that you can hopefully have high margins on your work, so you're making a good income for you and, let's say, a couple of other partners if you decide to stay at the smaller end. Now, there is an emergence of other types of consultancies who are more focused on their success criteria, might be less monetary and more about entering a certain market or having a certain organizational structure or working with certain types of people. So, yeah.
I would also say too, so once you mentioned private equity, that's really top heavy. There's even a lot of smaller private equity, companies that are coming about too. And then another thing that you mentioned, I wanted to touch on really for consultants out there is what your niche specifically is, right? So what Ben mentioned, like what specific industry you're really looking for, if there's, a specific service that you want to offer versus multiple services. Some people stay in one small bucket. Some people want to just be smaller for themselves and maybe one or two people under them. Others want to become larger, have heavy margin, and get to a selling point. So as you're going through that and thinking of what to do for your specific firm, really just think about what you can handle on your own, whether you want to take everything full suite for your company or whether you want to work a little bit for your own, but then for other companies too. Maybe you have a full-time job and are doing this on the side. Maybe you're working for multiple other larger firms. Those are all really, really great things to think about. So thanks for that insight, Ben. And secondly, too, I wanted to get into what could potentially be some pitfalls or challenges that we kind of see in this type of world. I know from my end and my personal experience, sometimes it's, even if, with my background, if I've seen rates that certain clients have signed off on, with me partaking this on my own now, it can be really hard to kind of think about a client really wanting to pay, a higher rate for this, but you do have to know how to pitch yourself, right? And really not only remain confident in that, but really talk to what your experience and background is, and really stand ground on, hey, look, this is, your worth. This is what you're going to do for the company. And then you're getting in there and getting out. Essentially, a consultant isn't going to be staying there long term. Sometimes that does work out for companies. Sometimes from budgets, it's not, right? So there's a other cost component of benefits that they're not paying for you just to come in and get the job done. So Ben, with your experience, background, and network, have you come across anyone that has experienced, heavy challenges or any specific pitfalls within this side of the house?
Yeah, sure. I think the main thing that a successful consultancy will start with is just a flywheel of continued business development, pipeline creation, closing of business, delivering of business, and then that virtuous circle. If you can stay on top of that at all times, quite a lot of firms say to us that they, will focus in on one of those areas quite heavily at a certain point in time. Let's say when they're first starting out, they'll all be about pipeline creation and getting opportunities to work with potential clients. And then when they start winning those, they have to then start delivering, and they forget about the business development part. In your business, you need to continuously monitor all of those KPIs to make sure you're addressing all of those, particularly at the moment with the economic climate as it is. You want to make sure that you've got plenty of growth opportunities to go into. Some other pitfalls you've addressed there, rates being another. I look at a couple of other influences and what other successful clients of ours are doing. Two of the biggest take-homes I would recommend to anybody listening is value-based pricing. If you can start to move away from just pure T&M to doing more fixed fee engagements, and you are capable at being able to deliver within that budget that you put to your client, then you will get typically higher margins, which you can then reinvest into your business. And the basis of that value-based pricing is trying to understand from your potential client what the end result is for them that you're delivering. So they're not just looking at you on a pure cost basis, they're looking at what you've actually been able to deliver. And some of the most profitable consultancies that we work with have absolutely mastered that. Even as they've scaled and grown, they've never lost sight of their overall value proposition, honing in on selling to a specific persona within a specific type of business, within a specific type of industry, with a specific type of pain, and they know that they can replicate on that value delivery time and time and time again. The second thing regarding rates and pricing people will push is sending your client 2 or 3 options. And with that third option, being as uncomfortable with that price as possible, and it feeling like it's really high, and actually even the client thinking that it's really high. But essentially, if you're not asking, you're not going to get. And that might open up doors within inside that organization. So Tiana, you just touched on there also another pitfall, which is that perception that you got to go in, deliver, and then you're done. But actually, once you're in, your foot's in the door, has that stakeholder got other opportunities that you can then get an extension on? Have they got contacts with inside the organization or inside their network, and you can help solve a similar problem for them? So yeah, plenty to go at.
Look, I already stuck my foot in my mouth, right? Like that's definitely a pitfall, right? You think you're going to get in and do that, but you are correct, which is great for us to talk about, because once you're in there, definitely got to do good work now. You can't just epically fail, but you want to make sure you show well, right? Because there are contacts, admins there, whether they stay with the company or leave and go to another company, they can always, remember your name. The company may want to hire you. I mean, I've also had that before too, where you go in and they want to bring you in on their team, and then you have a decision on whether you want to keep this going or whether you want to accept their full-time role. So you are correct. It's not necessarily. So I stand corrected, you all. Like, it's not necessarily getting in there and getting out, right? That may happen on some engagements, but there's definitely others that could just continue to be a repeat effect. Maybe they're in our HCM space, they could be bringing you in for benefits, but then all of a sudden want you for payroll and then go through an implementation. There could be multiple things that might pop up down the line that you could, definitely stay and help with.
I actually know one firm. They're not a client of ours, but your point about following the person rather than the business. This is a 100-person consultancy. They're UK based and they do an exceptional job of tracking C-level of executives inside certain types of target clients. And whenever they move, they keep in contact and then they do a similar or a big project for then that person inside the new organization. Now, whether that works in your space, not 100% sure, but like I said, there's a case out there, 100-person firm, great margins. I think they've been in business 25 years, always award-winning. They seem to have a fantastic culture within inside their business as well. Definitely a good business development angle that you touched on there, Tiana.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before we get into CMAP, I wanted to talk about the evolution of consulting and where we think we see that going. Obviously, AI is a big topic. Plug here. I'll be talking about AI on my next episode, but wanted to just kind of get your insight, Ben, on what you think is kind of like going to be the longer term evolution of consulting services. I mean, I know there are some people, from a recruiting stance, when you're trying to get people on from the consulting side, sometimes they think it's just a temporary thing, or they think because of people resigning from their jobs, it's just becoming a trend. But I really think it is definitely a longer term effect here to stay as companies are reviewing their budgets, especially as it is harder to get people on board and in the office. So what are your thoughts around how consulting will evolve?
Yeah, so again, looking at some of our more successful clients, some do have a traditional hierarchical pyramid-based structure, which is very office-centric and is heavily full-time employee-based. But there are a large number of consultancies that are using a disparately spread workforce, maybe having quarterly or annual meetups, but they're tapping into their niche and the talent within that niche, not just within one geographic territory, but globally, being able to service different types of clients that way as well. And I agree with you. I think that's a trend that will persist. I think in terms of like the overall market structure, I think there will be those larger clients that will stick with the big consultancies for big types of engagements. But that trend of boutiques and SMEs and solo consultancies taking pieces of the pie will also continue. If you have got a specialist domain expertise and you've got an ability to sell as well as deliver, then there's a real opportunity in the short to mid-term. Longer term, I think you're right. I can imagine AI is going to have a significant impact, not just on the actual delivery, but the operational efficiencies that organizations can gain. Some of the BD side of things as well is actually generating opportunities into the pipeline. So it's going to be a fascinating period of time for what I personally feel is one of the most fascinating markets that exists in the world, the consulting space, because every consultancy has got a different area of expertise. So essentially, in this one market, you've got people that are experts broadly across everything, whether it's life sciences and medcoms to energy and environmental issues to more traditional like FMCG or energy, gas, financial. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating long term. But I hope anybody on this podcast who feels like there's an opportunity doesn't look at the recent layoffs from the big firms, doesn't look at the market conditions and the media coverage, because trust me, there are consultancies that we work with that are growing 20-30% year on year, delivering fantastic margins, building a great brand, employing a lot of really intelligent, articulate and driven individuals. So there's opportunities out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for saying that. 'Cause yes, I think people can look at the news, of course, and always get discouraged, but just continue to put yourself out there, remain confident, right? Don't fall into the pitfalls, not even the one that I said myself not too long ago. Yes, I mean, you can definitely make it through. So really appreciate that insight and encouragement, Ben. That was really great. So I wanted to now end with just giving you the floor and let you kind of get into CMAP within itself. So I know there's plenty of demos out there. You guys can start following him, tune into some of his webinars and walkthroughs. It's a really great platform for consulting services in general, as far as everything you need to keep up with, tracking the KPIs. So Ben, I wanted to just allow you some time to kind of talk through that and give some snippets on software. So that way, anyone interested can start connecting with you and going from there.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is do exactly what you've suggested, Tiana. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Ben Edwards, CMAP. That's the business name. You'll find me. And from there, happy to share lots of hopefully useful and insightful consulting-based content. Sign up for the webinars. They're free. And like Tiana's doing with her podcast, we try and pull in people who've got some expertise and some interesting stories that you can leverage and get some value from for your own business going forward. So do that first off. And then from our side, so it's a PSA, which is professional services automation. Essentially, once you get to a certain size of firm, let's say somewhere between 5 and 10 people, you start to create these Excel Frankenstein to run everything that your business requires: pipeline, pricing, proposals, resourcing out your team, trying to track some KPIs, see what skills people have got within your associate pool. Essentially, all of that, we call it the black hole of operations in consulting, gets managed in CMAP. So you can do everything from bid to bill in our platform: pricing, proposals, pipeline tracking, resourcing out projects, making sure they're staying on time and on budget, having your people track their time and expenses, getting some great reports to help on the insight side. Yeah, and we've got hundreds of professional service clients utilizing it, which is where my knowledge comes from. I've never actually worked in a consultancy, but because I've worked with hundreds of them, I've sort of like absorbed the successes and seen some of the challenges that those face, and then hopefully relay that out to others in the industry so they can then learn from it.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Ben, for giving us that insight. So we'll make sure you guys can connect with Ben. He will be attached to this posting as well. So please click on his name and follow him, connect with him. And then also we'll put the link to CMAP. So that way you guys can go and visit the website, get some more insights, whether on your own. Feel free to reach out to him. He does not mind connecting, sharing. He's a wealth of knowledge. He does have a lot of good connections. So happy to connect my network with him as well, because I know there's a lot of people interested in this side of the house. So hopefully we can start, bridging the gap here. But thank you so much, Ben, for joining us today. This is great conversation. Really happy to have you on. And I am so excited to kind of just see how CMAP continues to grow. I will still continue to check your LinkedIn page, all your posts. And definitely I've joined many webinars over the last year or so. So really excited to see what's coming in the future.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tiana, too.
All righty, you all. So that was a great conversation with Ben Edwards. Again, he's a VP of Consulting Services at CMAP Software. Definitely check that out. It's good if you're just kind of getting into this world and just need some added insight. So some things that Ben had touched on were the different billing factors. So if you're a consultant, if you're already running a heavy or large company, you may know about these different processes. But if you're just starting out, so when he mentioned T&M, that's time and material. So that would just be an hourly rate where you would bill a client based on what has been worked each week by a consultant. Or if you have like a fixed rate or a fixed amount of hours that they have to pay, every single week or every single month, there's different billing models that you can kind of just go about on your own, right? When it comes to that. And sometimes it's, a company may stick to something specific. Sometimes you may have different accommodations for the client and company, depending on who that company is and, how much you want to work with them and what type of accommodations you want to have for them. Is your company or your team of consultants, are they going to be fully remote, or are there going to be some that are on site? How does that look, as far as like covering any type of like travel, making sure you have that traveling in the agreement as well is really, really beneficial for you. So there's different ways to kind of go about how you want to run your own specific firm. There's multiple consulting firms out there. Most of them kind of have their own specific twist on things. So if you are a consultant looking to get into this industry, you really want to focus on what your niche is. That is a really common question that you would specifically get asked, what you specialize in. Sometimes they're just firms that just do recruiting, permanent placements for recruiting for companies. Sometimes there's firms that just specialize in payroll and taxation. Sometimes there's just HR firms, right, where they just help HR support, and that's all. There's other firms that may cover a wide range of things. There are some firms that are large enough to where they have, teams in Canada where they cover, international aspects of things. There are some firms that may not have that, so it really just depends on what you specifically want to focus on. I know that there's a lot of people out there that will say, like, just focus on one. You just need like one thing, focus on one. And then there's others that may focus on multiple. Only you know what you can do. If you're a one-man show, then you really want to really just make sure you're not over exceeding yourself. You don't want to overpromise. You really want to make sure in this field that word of mouth is the main key thing. So you really want to do good work. That's what, Ben and I touched on, and making sure that your team that you're managing is doing good work, right? Because that's how constant, business will continue to flow, and people will always remember, your name and your services as time goes on. And then separately too, I know I mentioned earlier, maybe why a company would want to bring in a consultant to their specific firm. Look, if you're going through your day-to-day, and most companies at this, moment, or sometimes they're not even now, like even prior to now, outside of this economy, companies are running on slimmer teams. In our field, there may only be one payroll person, or there may only be one, HR person, and you may have a couple of hundred of employees or more. If you have a specific project, if your employee is focusing on their day-to-day, and there is a need for a heavier project, or there's an influx of tax notices that just came through, and you need to bring someone in to help research that because your person just doesn't have enough time in the day to do so, and it's time sensitive, that's where you can really bring in a consultant for very specific projects. And I think that is really beneficial, right? Because you're, from a company stance, you're not having to pay this employee, this consultant benefits. You're not having to worry about, workers' comp. Typically in contracts, you can close out at any time, but you need to be careful with that because there are some contracts that are locked in, for a couple of months or for a year. So you really want to make sure when you're selecting your consulting firm that you're paying attention to everything within the agreement, right? So that way down the line, you're not getting hit with just, hey, look, you only needed someone for 2 to 3 months, but then your contract demanded for you to pay a certain fixed amount for 6 months or for a year, right? That's a little different mindset when it comes to budget. So you really want to make sure that you're focused in on that, reviewing the contracts, evaluate multiple firms. There's plenty of us out there. So make sure you select the right one. And then also, as you're reviewing resumes, if you do have time, now I know there's times where you're in a time crunch. So say your payroll or HR person resigned on a Friday, walked out, and Monday is payroll, right? So sometimes desperate times calls for desperate measures, and you may have to quickly review an agreement and quickly look at a resume. Sometimes not even that, you're just signing to get someone in because you're trusting that person can do the job. But there's certain things that you really want to make sure, even in a time crunch, that you're absolutely paying attention to. And then use that consultant as, someone to provide you best practice support, just to make sure you don't find yourself in a pickle, long term, making sure that your system is set up from an automation standpoint properly, right? Because there are a lot of things now that, especially with AI, that can be cut out to where your team can be heavy strategic versus very mundane, minor tasks, right? So just how you can kind of make sure you're utilizing the system to its capacity. And so with that plug, next episode coming up will be about AI. So I'm really excited to have another special guest on that definitely is an expert in this side of the house. And I know many people are just concerned with, am I going to have a job? Is AI going to take my job away? It's the times now. So you really want to just make sure that you're staying up to speed. Definitely not running from AI at all. It's here, just figuring out how to coordinate it into your job, but how you yourself can also get to the next level. Because absolutely, we need to make sure that those smaller tasks that may have taken us 30 hours to do, depending on a week, or maybe 30 hours a month to do, if an AI automation functionality can take that down to 10 hours a week or 15, or cut that in half, that would be beneficial. And then let's think about what we can do to put ourselves at the next level. So that's a discussion we're going to get into in next episode. I'm excited to launch that in a couple of weeks. But once again, hope you all enjoyed this conversation. I'm really looking forward to hearing any feedback you all have. And absolutely check out my website, Transcenders Consulting Group. Really excited to launch this and get going from my end. So if you need any insight, whether it's in the weeds or whether it's strategic, any type of like advisory questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. So until next episode, you all, thank you for listening in.